So today's session is 2008 versus 2020, Alternative Paths During Economic Uncertainty, brought to you by the UMass Amherst Alumni Association. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So to start, I want to give you a few details about the people behind the scenes helping to monitor the chat boxes for you. My name is Karen Schultz-Battistoni. I'm the Director of Alumni Volunteer Relations. With me, we have Jared Shine, class of 2020, who is completing his bachelor's in philosophy in the next few days, actually. And then we have Laura Freeman, who is the Constituent Programs Coordinator in the Alumni Relations Office. So Laura and I will be here monitoring chat boxes, and Jared will be helping to moderate the session and to bring all of your questions from the chat box forward to the panelists. It is also from a conversation with Jared that this session came about. So we're thankful for him for speaking up and coming forward so that we could come together to provide you tonight's session with all of the great alumni speakers that we have here tonight. So a few details about the session. In the bottom section, there's a chat box. So you'll be able to click in there and type any comments that you have. You can either chat with the panelists or you can chat with everybody that's here, all of the attendees and the panelists. That would be your choice on which you would prefer to do. As those questions come in, we'll be looking at those, and then hopefully we'll try to get to as many, if not all of them, tonight during the session. During the session, we are recording this so that we can post the recording at a later date. By participating in tonight's session, you are consenting to participating in a recorded session. For all attendees, your microphone and your cameras are not enabled. So we will only be enabling the cameras and microphones of our speakers that are here with us tonight. If at any point you have any issues with technology, feel free to put that information into the chat box and we'll try to assist you so that we can get you back and connected with the session. So I just want to give a few details and then I will introduce tonight's panelists. So first off, I do want to totally acknowledge the fact that the time period we're in right now is quite unprecedented. And while we're connected with technology, we do know that for the class of 2020, your senior year looks a lot different than you anticipated it would be looking. And we acknowledge that it's a lot to process and handle to have that disruption to your senior year and for all students to have the disruption to their spring semester. So while we can't guarantee steps for what to do next, we can offer stories of experiences from alumni who graduated during the economic recession in 2008, 2009. This session tonight is focused on alumni who chose to go to graduate school and into service with the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps after graduation. The world today for those areas also looks a little bit different. So we know that Peace Corps volunteers have been sent home and some AmeriCorps members have had their service year disrupted or their tasks have changed. Many graduate programs are waiving standardized tests or application fees. So a lot of things are different in today's world. So we encourage you to check program web pages, whether it be Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, or graduate school programs for their updates and information. So each person tonight will be offering their own opinions and experiences. We encourage you to use this information as just one piece of the information you will use to make decisions for yourself. Current students should connect with their career services office, also connect with your academic advisor and your professors, and all of them are here to help you. So we hope that this will be another piece of information that will help you with all of those different offices where you can get support. For alumni and students, you can also go online and join our Alumni Advisors program through the Alumni Association, where you can receive career advice and resume reviews all in a virtual format. So if you go to umassalumni.com/advisors, you can access that Alumni Advisor program year-round. So a huge thank you to our panelists for joining us and being willing to share their time and experiences today I'm going to just briefly go down the names of our panelists, and then they'll be bringing up their cameras, and we'll start the session by leading in with some of the questions that you submitted when you registered. So our panelists today include Eric Borison, class of 2009, Shanika Davis, class of 2009, Nick Drewer, class of 2009, and Lola Akintobi, class of 2008. So a huge welcome to all of you. And as they're pulling up their screens and enabling their microphones, I'm also going to introduce Jared Shine, who will be here to moderate the questions and bring all the questions forth to the panel.
All right, hi everyone. As Karen mentioned, my name's Jared. Going to be graduating in around a week, and I'm going to be moderating this conversation. I first just want to give a thank you to Karen for setting this whole thing up, and thank all the panelists for taking your time to come here and give us some advice. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward also to hearing from people who, like us seniors, now graduated into a time of economic uncertainty. So we're just going to jump right in with the first question. So after graduation, many people are reviewing if they have all the skills and experience needed to get the kind of job or role that they want. For those of you who did AmeriCorps or the Peace Corps, can you explain how these programs work and what makes them different from traditional jobs? We're going to start with Lola. Lola, your mic's off.
Sorry about that, was still muted. Good evening, everyone. So AmeriCorps is unique in that it is not a traditional job, it is a service program. So during your service year, you are technically considered a volunteer and you are working on issues that bring greater good to the communities that you're working in. So you may be working on issues around education, healthcare, taking care of the environment. There's a number of issues. And so sometimes people will compare AmeriCorps to the Peace Corps. And what I will say about that is it would be known as the domestic version. So it is US based, and depending on the path that you take in AmeriCorps, you may be in a residential setting where you are living, where you are working, or you may move into the community that you are serving in, or it may be in your hometown that you may have moved into.
And Lola, do you mind just telling us a little bit about your path, how you kind of got to the program in the first place?
Absolutely. So in 2008, when I was graduating, like all of you, I was looking for jobs. But unfortunately, it was during the recession. And so I was applying and applying and applying, and I came across an AmeriCorps position, which at that point I didn't quite understand what it was, but it was interesting to me. So it was in my hometown, working with young people ages 13 to 20. At a drop-in center, and they were considered high-risk youth. Many of them were gang involved, court involved, and my role was the Pathways to Secondary Education coordinator. So I helped people who were graduating think about their next steps. So whether they were a senior at Lowell High, or they were in the alternative diploma program, or finishing up their GED, which is now known as HiSET, I was supporting them with their efforts and then helping them think through whether they'd like to be in some sort of training program or some sort of community college or four-year college.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Lola. So now we're going to go to Shanika for the same question.
Great to be here. I joined the Peace Corps 4 days after graduating from UMass in 2009. The Peace Corps is very similar to AmeriCorps, as Lola said, except that it is abroad. So I served in Romania for 2+ years, and I taught a lot of people, when you think Peace Corps, you think about teaching English. I actually worked at a day center doing youth development work with Roma children living on the streets. The application process was about a year long. I applied towards the end of junior year. At the time, there was a Peace Corps recruiter on campus, so I went to speak to the Peace Corps recruiter and had the initial interview, and then I spoke a little bit about what my area of interest was. I had to get a background check and medical clearance, and after that, I think they have since changed the process, but when I did it, you couldn't choose or know which country you were going to, which I think was a benefit to me, and that I don't know if I would have chosen Romania because I didn't know about Romania, but I wind up falling in love with the country. What else is unique about Peace Corps is they have an amazing language program. So when I arrived in Romania, I had no background knowledge in Romanian. And the first 3 months that I was in the Peace Corps, we were attending classes every day, learning both the skill set as well as the language. And we had to take a test to qualify for at a certain level in order to go into the field, which was helpful because once I was in the field, I had to find my apartment. I had to, many of the clients that I worked with, they didn't have English skills, so I really didn't need to be able to connect with them. And it's a network, and I think similar to America, once you do the Peace Corps, you're always a part of that network. And they do a lot of career events. They also help with scholarships if you want to go to school after you complete your service.
All right, awesome. Thanks for that, guys. So moving on to the next question. Were you originally planning on taking an alternative path, or was it a result of the stock market crash? And we're going to turn to Nick to start off with that question.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Drewer. I also graduated in 2009. I ended up doing an AmeriCorps program as well called the City Year. And I actually knew that I wanted to do a year of service before graduating. I knew I had looked into a number of different programs, including AmeriCorps, the Peace Corps. At the time when I was graduating, Teach for America had taken off and was very popular amongst UMass students. And so I knew I wanted to do something like that. One of the reasons for that is given the recession, and also I had a large amount of debt following undergrad, and I knew as part of AmeriCorps and the Peace Corps, I believe the AmeriCorps for sure, there's a pretty large grant that's given at the end to help students who have graduated to help pay off some of those loans. So I looked into a number of programs and ended up working in Boston running a service learning program for middle school students.
All right, awesome. And so next, we're going to turn back to Lola for that question.
Yes. So I was not thinking about AmeriCorps at all. The type of work that I was doing, I was really interested in. I knew that I wanted to work in a community. I knew that I wanted to work with a community that was under-resourced, but I definitely was not particularly seeking out AmeriCorps. Once I started looking for positions, a lot of AmeriCorps positions were coming up. And so that's what made me pay attention to it and think maybe this is something that I need to pursue.
Cool. All right, so the next question. So after graduation, did you take time off from working which may have positively or negatively influenced your direction in life? And for this one, we're going to turn to Shanika.
So I went directly into the Peace Corps, and some people don't consider that service work, but it really was. And it was a positive influence in that I just gained so many skills. And after the Peace Corps, I went on to law school. And I worked as a lawyer for 5 years, and now I'm back in grad school. And I think it's good to take some time, for me at least, take some time between grad school to really see what you want. So because it is a financial investment as well as a time investment.
All right, great. So now, I guess switching topics a little bit to primarily focus on grad school. The next question is, when did you consider graduate school and how did you decide what to study? For this, we're going to start with Eric.
Thanks, Jared. So just to introduce myself a little bit, I graduated in 2009 with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I actually started working right as soon as I graduated for Westinghouse Electric Company, just doing engineering analysis. And I actually went to graduate school part-time while I was there. I got my master's in mechanical engineering as well as my master's in engineering management. After about 3 years, I actually started working for a software company, which is, I think, a little bit different for someone with a background in mechanical engineering. I've been there for about 8 years. I had the opportunity to hire a lot of recent graduates, so I've had experience interviewing, quite a few people who may be in a similar position to some of the attendees today. So I actually did not consider graduate school until I had taken my job with Westinghouse Electric Company and learned that they offered tuition reimbursement. And so I think that anytime there's an opportunity to learn, to pursue a master's degree or any other type of experience, and there's someone, whether it's a company or an organization like the Peace Corps, willing to assist with that's an opportunity that I felt was too good to pass up. So that's really why I ended up thinking about and pursuing graduate school.
All right, thanks for that, Eric. Now for this question, we're going to turn to Nick.
So as I'm not sure if Lola mentioned it, but a lot of the AmeriCorps programs are actually 1 year as opposed to the Peace Corps, which is actually 2 years. So after the 1 year, I ended up, sort of gave me time to look for a job. I ended up working for a number of years for a consulting company doing work in occupational health. And during that time, I continued to pay off a lot of my loans and also try to decide where and what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I had a suspicion I wanted to go to graduate school, but I wasn't sure quite where. So in taking those years, about 3 or 4 years, I worked, and it gave me the opportunity to pick up some skills and pay off some loans, and also figure out exactly what I wanted to do. So I actually ended up eventually going to medical school and getting my MD as well as my MPH, and I'm now a surgery resident in Connecticut. So I don't think there's any problem in knowing that there's to take time off and to not necessarily jump in like Eric did immediately, that there's no harm in doing that. And then in many ways, I think knowing exactly what I wanted helped me sort of to get through it a lot easier.
All right, awesome. So the next question is, how, if at all, did your plans change when you were in grad school? And for this one, we're gonna go to Shanika.
So when I was in law school, I was doing a lot of work with around civil rights, and I was seeing the interconnection between civil rights and public health. But I didn't. So that was my first introduction, particularly around gun violence and looking at youth gun violence as a public health issue. And I was considering going back to grad school, but when I was in law school, I was like, I'm done with school. I need to work. And so I worked for a couple of years at the Attorney General's office, which made me want to go back and get my public health degree.
All right, cool. Next question. How did you go about picking a discipline to study in graduate school? Based on where we are today in this year, how would you recommend someone decide what to study if they have varied interests? And for this one, we're going to go to Eric.
Thanks, Jared. So I kind of picked by default. So when I was working at Westinghouse, they first kind of forced you or would only provide tuition reimbursement if you pursued a master's in your current field of work. So for me, that was mechanical engineering. Once I finished that, then there was a little bit more flexibility if you decided to pursue another master's. And that's when I pursued the master's in engineering management. In terms of what I would recommend to pick a field to study, I think it's really thinking about where you, at least right now, think that you want to go in your career, as well as something that you're interested in. And, you know, once you've thought about that and decided on that, then understanding for the kinds of positions that you might like to take on, whether it's kind of immediately after graduate school or even further down the road, 5-10 years into your career, what kind of skills do you need in order to move into that kind of position? So yeah, and actually a related question from Jamie asking me if I could have only pursued one master's degree, which would it have been? And for me, I would say the master's in engineering management, because ultimately that's the kind of position that I wanted to be in a management position, but within the engineering field. And then also because it was something that was a little bit different from what I had done during my undergraduate studies. And I think it's really important in order to develop a broad set of skills. So for those reasons, that's why I would have just done the engineering management degree if I had to pick one.
All right, great. And yeah, thanks, Jamie, for the question. If anyone else has any questions, don't hesitate to write them down in the box, and I'm sure we'll have time to get to them towards the end. And so next for that question, we're going to go to Shanika.
I had always wanted to go to law school. And so, but I didn't know what area within the law that I wanted to study until I started doing internships within the law. But I had no idea I wanted to study public health. So I was thinking more about what impact I want to have in the world and which degrees or what sort of skill set will I need in order to have the impact.
All right, cool. So for the next question, we're going to shift gears a little bit and start talking about gaining experience and building skills. So in your AmeriCorps and Peace Corps roles, what skills did you develop that helped you out later? And for this question, we're going to go to Lola.
So I think my biggest lesson was how to be flexible. Things were consistently changing. And in terms of problem solving, I usually was the one who had to come up with the solutions for the problems that were coming up in the classrooms I worked in. So definitely problem management, conflict resolution, because I had, again, young people who were gang involved, court involved. So at times they were having interpersonal issues. Case management was another skill that I learned, facilitation and teaching. So I actually did 2 service years. So in my first service year, I was tutoring and working with students one-on-one. In my second service year, I taught the health education class in the alternative diploma program. So learning how to teach in a classroom setting was absolutely huge. I also learned advocacy for myself and then also the students that I was working with. A lot of the students had various needs. So it wasn't just a matter of how they were pursuing their education, but it was also a matter of food security, housing stability, being able to parent their children, being able to navigate the living situations that they were in. So advocacy was huge for me. And then I think another piece was also management. So in my second service year, I was one of the crew leaders. So it was myself and another AmeriCorps member where we were in charge of our team and essentially acted as unofficial supervisors. So management was key, but also learning how to manage up. So I had 2 supervisors and they weren't always able to solve the issues that I would come to them. So I had to learn on the fly how to approach my managers and help them in terms of managing me.
All right, next we're going to go to Nick for the same question.
Yeah, I think I can echo what Lola says in many of the conflict resolution and working together with a diverse group of team, with a diverse team. I think I also say that AmeriCorps has a wonderful way of putting you into some pretty difficult situations where you don't necessarily have all the resources or all of the skills that you necessarily need. But I think it's important that or I think it's important to know that they recognize that many of you are in that situation, people are really great about supporting you and helping you to work through those situations as they arise. For me, City Year is a very nice AmeriCorps program. So we had a really nice added benefit of having corporate sponsors through the AmeriCorps program. And because of them, they offered the opportunity for things like resume review, interviewing skills, and things like that. So during that year, I had the opportunity to interview with a number of executives through Bank of America, and to look at my resume with executives from Bank of America, which for me was a nice opportunity, and something that I don't think I would have had the opportunity to had I been working, or had I not been in this AmeriCorps program.
All right, thanks, Nick. Let's see. And so moving on, so if someone isn't planning on doing AmeriCorps or the Peace Corps, how might they leverage volunteer roles to help them with getting a job? And for this question, we're going to go to Eric.
Thanks, Jared. I think that whether it's AmeriCorps or the Peace Corps or any other volunteer opportunity, like we just heard from Lola and Nick, any opportunity, whether it's paid or not, gives you an opportunity to develop skills that are going to be valuable in getting a job. And so I think it's about, especially in times like this where it's very uncertain, getting a job and doing certain things is very challenging right now. So looking for those volunteer opportunities that still exist given the current situation, and using those as an opportunity to develop skills so that when this is over, and it will be over, it's not going to be like this forever. When it's over, you have a step up on everyone else, and you also haven't been sitting there doing nothing as well. So that's what I would say. It's just that, whether it's a volunteer or anything else, use it as an opportunity and get the most out of it that you can.
All right, thanks, Eric. Next, we're going to turn to Lola.
Yeah, so absolutely, you are able to turn your volunteer skills into job-related skills that you will use further in your career. One of the suggestions that I have is continuously review your resume and really think about what are the skills that I'm gaining. So if you work in a soup kitchen, what are the things that you're doing consistently, right? So you might be the person who is handling the accounts. So you have some financial management. You might have some more of the soft skills where you are managing the team. So supervision might be a skill. You are constantly learning if you are interested in what you are doing. So absolutely take stock of the skills that you are doing. Sometimes you might need to do a little bit of research for a boost. So if you visit any of the pages that help you with resume writing, you can look through the skills and you can do a checklist of, are any of these skills something that I'm gaining in these volunteer positions? And chances are you absolutely are gaining those. I think you have to figure out how to talk about it, because you're gaining the skills. It's a matter of making it relatable to your potential next employer.
All right, thanks, Lola. And so moving on to a few more job-centered questions. So how did you search for a job after graduation? And for this question, we're going to go to Eric.
Thanks, Jared. I think I have the next question too, and they're very related. So I don't know if you want to ask the next question. I can answer kind of both of them at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. So the next question we're going to ask is, and what approach did you take on job applications during the recession?
Yeah, and so I was searching for jobs at the end of 2008. I was hoping that before I started my last semester of my senior year, I was able to accept a job. So it definitely was during the recession. A lot of industries were suffering from that, but there were other industries that weren't. So I was searching for a job before graduation instead of after graduation. And the approach that I took was to apply to pretty much absolutely everything that I could, whether it was really, in the mechanical engineering field or not. I applied to, it wasn't just design engineer jobs. I applied to jobs that they may have even been financial analyst jobs, but if you had an engineering background, they liked that kind of background, and you could have been a candidate for that. So I really tried to cast as wide of a net as I possibly could. So I applied to everything. I also leveraged career services very, very heavily. I didn't have the best GPA out of everyone, so I really wanted to make sure that I was able to set myself apart by my interview skills. So I leveraged career services. I did mock interviews time and time again. I leveraged them in order for them to review and provide feedback on my resume, for them to help me, find any position that really I could apply for. So I strongly recommend that everyone do that. That's a service that is free to you. That's included in your tuition, and it's really, really invaluable. And having interviewed hundreds of soon-to-be graduates, the way that you interview will really, really set yourself apart as well. It doesn't matter if you're the person that has the best skills necessarily or the highest GPA. Interacting with people and having people skills is something that's critical in being successful in the working world. And so the way that you interview is your opportunity to demonstrate that. So that's what I did. I applied for everything that I could possible and leveraged the career services and the services that are available to you as a UMass student. And luckily, I actually got to pick from four different jobs. So I think that approach ended up being definitely beneficial for me, and I would recommend that.
All right, thanks, Eric. And yeah, I'll definitely second what you said about preparing for interviews. I mean, over the course of the past, a couple months and semester with me looking for jobs, I've found that, meeting with career services and practicing for interviews has been like so helpful. And like even just taking time to go in front of a mirror, sit at my desk and like practice my answers just made me so much more comfortable around the material that I was saying and really helped me when I was in interviews. So I would definitely recommend that as well. And so now we're going to move over to some of the questions from the audience. And so we have one from Joe, and he says, I'm thinking about getting my MBA. Would you suggest going into a program right away or wait a bit to get some real world / work experience? I guess anyone who thinks they have a good answer for that can go ahead.
So Jared, I can respond to that. I don't have my MBA, but I think the closest thing that I could, while still having an engineering focus, so the engineering management degree. So I think a lot of it depends on what kind of program you're looking to pursue in terms of your MBA. Some MBA programs actually almost require that you have some work experience. I think it obviously depends on, are you able to get some work experience right now? If you're not, and you really want to pursue your MBA, I think that's a fine thing to do. One thing that I did really like about pursuing my master's while I was working at the same time, and I think if you get some work experience, this would apply to an MBA as well, is that as you're learning those skills, you actually get to apply them in real time. And so you get to see the skills that you're learning pay off, and you get to apply them and practice them, which is something that I found really rewarding, but also useful in terms of you don't have to necessarily wait 2 years to apply some of the skills that you've developed. So I guess in summary, I would recommend that you get some work experience, but I don't think that's a requirement.
All right, thanks, Eric. And also thanks to everyone who's sending in questions. We're getting a good amount, and looks like we're gonna be able to get to at least most of them. So the next question is from Madeline, and she asks, for those who attended grad school, were any of you unable to work full-time during school? And did you take out loans for rent / living expenses?
When I was in law school, I they don't allow work study for the first semester of law school. And so I was trying to work outside of the school, but I did take out loans. And right now I'm currently working while getting a graduate degree. But in addition to that, I just searched for a lot of scholarships as well.
All right, thanks, Shanika. Does anyone else have anything to say about that, or?
I can speak to that. So I went to medical school. I was not able to work at all during that time. A lot of these programs, when you're applying to graduate school, the government is kind enough, if you're able to apply for federal loans, to include a lot of extra funds for living expenses. And they understand that you're not going to just be, most of the time you will not be working, that you'll be studying. So a lot of times when you're looking to make that decision, that money is already included, so it's not necessarily something you have to worry about. Until the long term, we have to pay it off.
All right, thanks, Nick. And kind of going off what Shanika just said, so we got a question. What's a good place to look for scholarships for law school? Do any of you guys know anything that might weigh in on that?
I think contacting the school you're looking at. I always made friends with the financial aid office. There are a lot of scholarships that students don't apply to because they don't know about it. And then also there's different programs that might prepare you to go to law school that also have scholarships. But I think generally speaking to your advisors and contacting the schools that you're interested in.
All right, thanks, Shanika. So the next question we have is from Jonathan. And he asks, how specific were the AmeriCorps / Peace Corps related to your interests and majors? Do you feel like you developed technical skills specific to your major rather than general soft skills?
I can start. So my major was psychology, and I was really interested in working with groups of people. I was interested in case management, so that was definitely what I ended up doing within my AmeriCorps program. So it was related. I was pretty open in terms of what I was willing to do. Even though I focus on education, I really had an interest in sexual health and reproductive health. And in my second year of AmeriCorps, I was able to leverage that to go over to the local community health center and start doing some work with them. So I became certified in HIV counseling and testing and was doing that in the high school. So I use my AmeriCorps experience to really connect me to more of the things that I wanted to be doing when I came out of it. I knew that I was interested in reproductive health. I knew that I was interested in HIV, also interested in teen pregnancy prevention. So I started working with my supervisors to let them know, like, hey, it will really be in your interest if you have someone who can do this internally. And if you have someone who is also in the high school, I can connect them back to the youth program. So that was something that I took a chance on, and it ended up being able to get me way more technical skills than I expected if I hadn't said anything. So again, that advocacy piece was huge for me.
All right, thanks, Lola. Does anyone else have anything to input for that question, or should we move on? No. All right. So our next question is for Nick. Did your service in AmeriCorps influence your decision to go to med school?
I think it absolutely did. I don't know if it was a direct impact. Like I said, I necessarily wasn't working in a medical related or health related field. I ran a service learning program for middle school students, about 150 middle school students. So we worked in helping bring together a diverse group of students from around Boston and learning about different social issues. So it certainly had nothing related to medicine, but I think it was an opportunity to sort of think a lot about some of these topics in health, and certainly relationship of things like poverty, racism, things like that, and how they relate to health, especially when you see it in a middle schooler. So in that way, it did relate to and did help me sort of influence me to go to medical school.
All right, thanks, Nick. So our next question is from me. I was wondering if you guys have any good tips for living with living on the small stipends that you typically get from a program like AmeriCorps and the Peace Corps.
Budget.
Yeah.
That's going to be huge for you. Do not try to live outside of your means. Definitely try to stick to balling on a budget. So for me, it meant that I was living at home, which was challenging at times, but it was definitely worth it. I think if you are living not with family, so if you have your own roommate situation, think about ways that you can be social, but also spend the least amount of money. So can you do Friday night potlucks where each person brings a dish? And now because you were the host, you have extra leftovers to keep you through the weekend. I think connecting to definitely different programs. So knowing where to get the affordable fruits and veggies was key for me. And then I think the biggest thing for me was reminding myself that it was temporary. I was not always going to be living off of such a small stipend. So once I started making more money, I was going to be able to do more of the things that I wanted. But for a little while, you're going to have to hunker down, budget, and maybe take the cheaper options of the things that you like to do. So if you love the movies, go to the matinee instead of the evening one. You'll figure out where to cut your costs, but it's manageable.
And I agree with Lola. For the Peace Corps, the budget is similar to what around a little bit above the minimum wage of the country that you're in, and they provide you with a budget that you can use. And so it's all about managing it.
All right, thanks guys for those answers. Let's see what we got. So, question from Juliet. How do you keep yourself motivated and continuing to apply for jobs if you're receiving no responses?
I can probably answer that because there are plenty of times where I didn't receive responses because I was applying to so many jobs. I think a couple of things. So one is just perseverance. You just have to get through it. And also, and this is something that's hard for a lot of people, but you have to kind of get comfortable with rejection and realize that it's not personal. And you're going to find that throughout your career as well. Not everything is going to get approved. Not everyone is going to love every idea that you have. So that doesn't mean that you're not talented and you don't have value to provide. So one would be perseverance. And then the other would be know that this is not going to be forever. So I probably more than 99% of the people out there don't stay in the first job that they get out of school as well. So, be open to applying to different jobs. Maybe it's not your dream job or with the company that you really, really wanted to work for. But know that it's not forever. And maybe it's even an internship that you take on just because, times are very difficult right now. I think as long as you're getting some experience, it's going to be valuable, and it's also going to be temporary as well. Maybe you're in that job for 2 years or 3 years, and then you move on. And at that point, you've had the opportunity to develop a lot of skills, and you can kind of go for that, whatever that dream job is, or, whatever the company is that you really want to work for.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And kind of piggybacking off of that a little bit, I would say don't be too afraid to be a little pushy. If you have a contact at a company that you're applying for and you're, I guess, trying to get your foot in the door and sending in your resume and you're not really hearing much, don't be afraid to send him another email or maybe give him a call. Just asking and being a little pushy can't can't hurt, you know? So next question is from Jamie. And he says, I'm interested in applying to grad school for a fall 2021 start date, specifically either a master's or PhD in computer science. What is the panel's thoughts on pursuing graduate school during or right after a recession?
So I can answer that as well, Jared. I don't think there's any problem with doing that, especially given that, and again, I'm probably getting old saying this, but this is temporary. Yeah, it will have lasting effects, but if you pursue graduate school now, or even, you know, in 6, 12, 18 months, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think a computer science degree probably helps you qualify for jobs that are going to be in demand as well. It's easy for someone with a comp sci degree to work from home as well. So, you know, I think looking at the industry that you're going to be in and how hard is that going to be hit by the current situation is one thing to weigh. But yeah, I certainly would be supportive of pursuing a graduate degree, whether it's now or, you know, again, in 6 to 18 months.
All right, thanks, Eric. Our next question is from Saul. It's for a question for Shanika, and he asks, how would you recommend graduates search for law internships without a pre-law background? I'll be graduating with a degree in economics.
So one great thing about law school is that you don't have to study anything to do with law before going to law school. I was a journalism major. There are several internship tracks you can do. So if you're interested in the law firm, a lot of law firms will hire recent undergrads that are interested in pursuing law school later. There's an AmeriCorps program that focuses on placing individuals within legal service agencies. And so there's many options that you can do.
All right, thanks, Shanika. And so I think this is going to be our last question. How can you find a volunteer role to get experience? Where should you look?
I'm happy to start with that. I think one of the best places you can first look is in your own community. There are always going to be places around, whether it be a food bank or a local high school or anything like that, there are opportunities. You know, echoing what we've talked about tonight, I think, you know, there are bigger opportunities to volunteer as well at larger organizations. And I think that, you know, if anything about what's going on right now, now is a great time to be volunteering. I know one of the programs I always wanted to do but was not able to because of the time commitment was Big Brothers Big Sisters, and they're a great organization that you can be involved in while you're working. And so even if you're pursuing a professional career, they're a great opportunity to still be involved in your own community and contribute something.
All right, thanks, Nick. Anyone else?
Nick, thank you for mentioning the Big Brother Big Sister program, because that's actually a program that I used to volunteer with, that I did while I was in grad school and I wanted to stay connected to community spaces. So definitely I would echo that, like Big Brother and Big Sister is always looking for qualified volunteers for their littles. And that can be like elementary age kids, middle school kids, or high school kids. And it's a really great opportunity. I would also say a website that's existed for a really long time is idealist.org. So they have a number of jobs, but they also have volunteer opportunities. Sometimes you will see a mix of the two under each category. So I would definitely check there, and then also reach out to different organizations in your communities. So if you are interested in a young parents program, ask if they need anything, and you can choose to keep it open and say, like, are you looking for any volunteers? Or you can sell yourself a little bit and say, I bring these skills to the table. Can I help with X, Y, and Z? And you never know what you'll find.
Jared, just a couple more. I've done some volunteer work with United Way. So I used to do a bit of volunteer work with them. That usually was more kind of discrete events versus ongoing volunteerism. And then another organization I've worked with is the Special Olympics, specifically Special Olympics of Massachusetts. Unfortunately, a lot of the practices are canceled at this point, but I still think that, you know, the athletes need and appreciate interaction. So there's even ways to volunteer remotely through the Special Olympics as well.
And then with what's going on right now, a lot of government agencies are looking for volunteers to trace the cases of coronavirus, and they will train you to do it. So those are another opportunity.
All right, thanks, guys. And we actually got one more question before we wrap up here. How did living through the recession in 2008 prepare you for the current recession?
So I think I've said this a couple of times, but resilience. All of us got through it. Pretty much everyone got through it, right? At some point, maybe it was rough, depending on, you know, especially what industry you may have been working in. But I would just say, knowing that it's not going to be like that forever, and also, you know, having gone through that. And been able to develop skills and find a job and go to graduate school. I think anytime that you overcome a challenge like that, it helps to build character as well.
All right, thanks, guys. So now I'm going to pass it back to Karen to wrap things up a little bit.
Great. Thank you, Jared, and thank you, everybody, for your answers. So as we head towards the close of the hour, I'm just going to give a few pieces of information about some of the different career resources that are accessible to alumni and students. So we have a slide we're just going to pull up quickly. The different resources that we have, most of them are virtual. So in times like this, it makes it all the more relevant, I think, and easy to use. So if you go to umassalumni.com/career, you'll be able to get to the different resources. We have the UMass Amherst Alumni Advisors Program, where we have many alumni from all areas of the world, actually, all industries in there, and you can connect with them for a phone call or for a video chat to get resume help, interview help, LinkedIn help, or just a career conversation. Maybe it's an informational interview. We also have career counselors. We have 6 career counselors. The first consultation and meeting with a career counselor is totally free. Additional sessions, you receive a UMass discounted rate for that. And a lot of people find that helpful to be able to focus a job search or a career path or trying to explore what kind of interest they have and what that might lead to. If you go to umassalumni.com/events, you'll get our whole event listing. If you're not receiving emails about events like this one and other ones, you can also connect with us at umassalumni.com to ensure that your email address is updated with us. We have all of the webinars, so this recording will be on there as soon as we get it closed captioned. We also did a panel with another group of alumni from 2008-2009 that went directly into the work world. And that session will also be posted online as well. So we encourage you to check those details out and to access those resources after the fact. So to do a final wrap up, I'd like to be able to go back to all the panelists for a final closing thought, to just have them give us a few thoughts, a few things to think about as we end today with our time together. So whoever wants to jump in.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and start. So I'll say this one more time. This isn't going to be forever. this is temporary. It definitely is challenging, and it will challenge you, especially given the point that you are in your education and your career. But with every challenge is opportunity. And so, yes, maybe you don't get the exact job or the exact experience that you want, but if you use this as an opportunity and you go to a great school, it was a good school when we graduated. I think it's a great school now with great resources and leverage those, then you can come out on the other end with skills that other people won't have. So use this challenging time as an opportunity to rise up and set yourself apart from other people.
Yeah, to add to that, I think in moments of crisis, there's a great opportunity. There's an opportunity for you to be innovative. There's an opportunity for you to take risk. And that's what I think my class did a lot of. We got a lot of entrepreneurship out of the last recession. And remember that your career is lifelong. There's no particular path for anyone. It's just a path for you. So think about what your passion is and do it.
I would say that think of the challenges that you may be coming across now as just a detour. So a detour is not the end of the road for you. It does not stop you from getting to the destinations along the journey of your career. It just means that you're taking a different path. So you can see new things, you can learn new things, you can take some time for reflection, you can take some time to strengthen skills that you didn't think were important to you. But this temporary challenge is not something that has to be, it doesn't have to set the precedent for the rest of your career. So things will go up. I promise it can happen, and stay optimistic. So if you end up in a role that is not necessarily your passion, figure out places that you can do things that you're passionate about outside of work. So you still have fulfillment in different areas of your life, and eventually you will get to that career path that feels like it's more suited and more aligned to what you originally envisioned for yourself.
And I guess to say to add to all three things, this is a really exciting time. This is a time that you have the opportunity to make a couple mistakes and to have a lot of fun, and to do those things that you're never going to have the opportunity to do again in many cases. So remember that at the end of the day, it's about obviously doing well and obviously being true to yourself, but make sure you have a little fun along the way.
Yeah, and just from a student's perspective to kind of wrap up also is that I've kind of felt a lot of pressure to kind of know exactly what I want to do coming out of university, and it's just nice to hear a bunch of different stories from people who've had more windy paths and that didn't necessarily know exactly where their lives and their careers were going to take them since they graduated. So thank you guys all for that.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight and offering so many great questions. I want to do a huge thank you to all of our panelists for making time to share your stories and your insights and to answer all of the questions that came at you tonight. And a huge thank you to Jared for moderating the conversation and bringing the conversation together for all of us. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night and go UMass.